Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 126. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by the turkey goblin, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today?
It's me. I'm doing well. Not big on turkey, though, we'll admit.
No, I don't get excited about... I like turkey cold cuts, but I don't get excited about the roast turkey. You know, the turkey you carve up. I like all the accoutrements.
Yeah,
that come along, the yams, the mashed potatoes.
Yeah. I think a turkey is just too big, you know, for a bird. I feel like generally, like whenever I think of like what I like about chicken, it's usually like the skin to meat ratio because they're small enough to have like a good ratio of that stuff. But like, I don't think anybody's gonna deny that like the turkey skin is pretty damn delicious. But then you just got all this meat on the inside that's like, well.
Yeah, I'm not a huge white meat guy, so you're right. The bird is so big that you get a lot of dark meat too, but it's really quite an overflow of white meat, which I'm not crazy about. I'm not wild about white meat, but nonetheless, we're also recording this a day before Thanksgiving, and this will go live the day after Thanksgiving. So who knows how it went? I mean, we both might have gotten poisoned by our respective dinners, and
yeah,
who knows? It's 2020. Who knows what's possible? But happy belated Thanksgiving and happy Black Friday to everyone out there, Cyber Monday, etc., and to the rest of the world. Happy day to you. Happy day of the week. This is, of course, Sacred Symbols, our weekly PlayStation podcast. I wasn't really going to say it is. It does go live each and every week here on patreon.com/colinslaststand, 3 days early and ad free, or you can go to free feeds and get it there. No charge, but we do appreciate your support on Patreon. I wrote on Twitter recently that I don't feel like I'm doing a good enough job of selling our Patreon consistently enough, mostly because I find that stuff annoying in the stuff I listen to. So I just try to remind people, like, that's where you can find us. That's how you submit inquiries. That's how you get access to our Discord and ad-free access and all of that. But I don't want to nail you and hammer you guys, but we'd love your support over there if you can afford it. It's $1 a month or up. So I think you can afford it.
It's pretty cheap.
Personally, yeah. It's a good way to get Sacred Symbols Plus as well, which is our Patreon exclusive episode of the show we do each and every week. Last week, we called in Dustin and Mr. Matty Plays to talk about PlayStation 5 versus Xbox Series X/S because they both have access to both of those consoles and have had them since launch, basically. So that was a pretty popular episode. We thank everyone for their kind words on that. I think this coming week, it's time to do the Miles Morales spoiler cast. So we will get that going and spool that up with, of course, plenty of your inquiries post Thanksgiving. So keep an eye out for that thread if you're on Patreon. Now, Chris, we have a few things to get into here, and then actually a few interesting little stories before we get into the games we're playing. Then we'll talk about the actual news of the week. So we have a little bit to get through on this holiday week.
What better time?
Alejandro D. Miguel, I'm sure I just said that perfectly, wrote in to us on Patreon and said, Colin, I know you like to call the new Ratchet and Clank game a rift apart, but someone lied to you. There's no in the title. Don't want to come off as an asshole. My brain also likes to switch it into drift apart. Much love. No, you're right. I keep calling it that. I don't know why. Maybe it's because, 2009's PS3 exclusive A Crack in Time. Maybe that's the excuse. I don't really know. But it is just Ratchet and Clank rift apart. So you're right. I'm just making up names for games recently, as we saw with Assassin's Creed.
I've been doing this too, though. Honestly, like I've said a rift apart a couple times as well. It just sounds right.
It does, but also Ratchet and Clank games typically it's like a double entendre, and a rift apart isn't really a double entendre. Rift apart is obviously the double entendre with ripped apart or whatever. So I can see, or some. Usually, it used to be also a sexual innuendo. Back in the day. They don't really seem to do that anymore.
Yeah, up your arsenal.
But up your arsenal and even A Crack in Time and stuff. I mean, there was all sorts of weird stuff that they used to do with Ratchet and Clank. But nonetheless, thank you for the correction, Alejandro. Now, we got an honest note here from Jason Vanover on Patreon. I wanted to throw it out there, see what you think. And maybe others can write into us about this as well. I'm not experiencing it personally. Maybe Chris is. He says, while I'm likely alone in this, I can't help but have this feeling that now that I've finished Miles Morales and messed around with a few other games, the overall luster for the PlayStation 5 has worn off a bit for me, and to a degree that I can't remember happening for console launches in the past. While I absolutely love the PS5 and the quickness and quietness the machine provides, I feel like I'm staring at a $500 less elegant piece of software that simply plays my PS4 games, I think you mean hardware, much better than its predecessor. Not that that's a bad thing, but I'm questioning whether or not it was yet a necessary thing. All this to say, I'm not entirely sure that I had to have this console on day one. For all those out there unable to get one who are clamoring for the PS5 experience, I'm here to suggest that holding off and waiting until more games are ready and the unit as a whole has more to offer, HBO Max anyone, might not be the worst idea in the world. Curious to get the trio's thoughts on this. Well, Dustin's on here this week. But first of all, thank you for writing in with your honest impressions. Now, Jason, I am a little troubled by one thing. You used an ellipsis in your write-up, no fewer than 4, 5, 6, at least 6 times. It's excessive use of the ellipsis.
It's a lot.
I don't like it. So just correct that next time you write in if you can. Now, Chris, per Jason's comment, I mean, how are you feeling about the PS5? Has it lost its luster for you as well, or are you feeling pretty good about it still?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I think the most disappointing thing to me is just the games that I was most anticipated. Like, obviously, Spider-Man didn't take too long. It's a much smaller game. Demon's Souls, I'm so bad at that I've essentially just put it on hiatus. And what I was really excited for was to play, Destiny 2 at high frame rates with a high FOV, and that patch isn't coming till December, so, I am just sort of in a weird place with it where I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for, December, so I could get some use out of this thing. But yeah, I think generally speaking, I'm still happy I got it. I'm glad that I got it. I'm glad that I don't have to deal with the headache of trying to find one later on, because it's already been a bitch. But I would say this for pretty much any console launch where, like, I don't really feel that a day one purchase of any of these machines has ever been necessary. I don't think you really just have everything to gain from everything by waiting, Like, I just don't see... I didn't see value in getting the PS3 or the PS4 or the PS2 or the PS1 on day one either. Like, it's typically when these games, when these systems have a pretty large library, like midway through its life cycle, that I think it's probably like the best time to jump on. But I wouldn't say that's unique to this.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I think that's kind of the natural ebb and flow of, like Chris is saying, buying a console early. I'm personally still really into playing it, although I've moved on. I beat Miles Morales, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I moved on and just went back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, so I am playing a PS4 game on it now, and it still primarily is my Netflix and YouTube machine most of the time.
Does it run Final Fantasy VII better than it did?
I can't really tell. I think it loads a little faster, but it doesn't seem that impressive.
Right.
Compared to PS4 Pro, which is where I was playing it, but I could be wrong on that. It could be substantial, but I haven't noticed much of a difference personally. Not that I'm really tuned into that sort of thing, but nonetheless, Jason, I don't think you're alone. And like Chris said, I don't think this is unique to this console, but it's like the spike in the beginning and then the lull. We talk about it a lot with PlayStation 2, which really came out with a lot of games, but none of them really worthwhile. And it wasn't until the next year that anything worthwhile, like The Bouncer or Onimusha or something like that, and later on Grand Theft Auto 3, came in 2001 and really solidified needing a PS2. Those games in particular were not backwards compatible, but we have this kind of double-edged sword that we discussed last week where, well, even Miles Morales is on PS4, so there isn't a huge reason to get a PS5 for first or second party stuff unless you're really clamoring for some Demon's Souls or whatever. So I know I kind of have expectations knowing that I'm not going to be playing this thing a crazy amount in natively with native games at the outset, but we've been talking about that for a while. And yeah, I'll reiterate what I said, Jason, because you suggested too. I long said we didn't need this console this year, and I was confident that they weren't going to release it this year. I'm still kind of surprised that they did, but it seems like, and we'll talk about in a little while, they're very happy that they did. But I could play PS4 games for years and still be not caught up. So it wasn't like I was like really falling over myself to get this thing anyway, but I'm happy I have it. I think it's awesome. I'm still getting used to it. And I'm still not crazy about some of its interface stuff. I still think it's too annoying to... I feel like it responds inconsistently to your button prompts or your button kind of gestures depending on where you are. And I still have to kind of adjust.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while to unlearn a lot of using the PS4. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, you've been using it for like 7 years.
Right, every day. So it's going to take time.
Yeah, with minimal changes between like firmware updates and everything. So it's like you've got this kind of like baked in kind of way of using it's like if you got a new phone and the interface just worked completely different. It's like, what? I thought the swipe up was supposed to bring stuff up, like settings and shit. What's going on?
It's confusing. It's confusing. I don't know. I don't think it's just me or you with the UI. I just don't think it's quite where it needs to be. And I forgot to bring this up last week, Chris, that when you go deep enough into the UI and deep enough into the OS on PS5, it turns into the PS4 OS. Like if you go into the settings, it just looks like the PS4 OS at that point. So it's like, well, just kind of maybe roll it back a little further towards the top. You know, I don't need all of these new bells and whistles. I miss the old gesturing, and I kind of wonder what they're seeing in their own data about, because they can see it to a granular effect as long as they're looking for it. How many times people press the PlayStation button on accident, or press the PlayStation button 5 times and then turn it off, realizing that they're looking to turn the console off and there's too many steps in between. They can see all that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I gotta be a little honest. Because my Series X finally got here, right? And when I booted it up and I saw the same UI, I was kind of really glad. Like I knew that was the case, but I felt like extra happy that I was like, all right, now I don't have to fumble with this fucking thing.
Well, when Micah was here last week, she's a huge Gears fan, and she was playing Gears 5 on Xbox Series X. And so I was messing around with it when she wasn't using it. And I found it, first of all, the controller is great. And I found the user interface, like you said, like it's just snappy. It makes sense. It's intuitive. I like the whole setup of the Xbox Series X more, the way it looks aesthetically and the way it functions. But of course, it's not going to have the games that
obviously
PlayStation has. And so that's what really matters most. And of course, my experience with it was also brief. So I want to say that as well. All right. You had brought up firmware, by the way, and there is a new firmware update. This is the second one for PS5. It is available now. It should download automatically, but you can go prompt it to download if it didn't. It's just stability and some usability stuff. So check that out. Just want to warn everyone out there, because you were talking about December, of course, Chris, and the big game in December. We usually don't have big December games, but the big one this year is Cyberpunk 2077, which I think comes out December 10th. Mm-hmm. And much like we said, it was very weird, right? I told you guys it was weird that they went gold and then delayed the game. And Ryan McCaffrey and I were talking on Twitter. Ryan McCaffrey is IGN's Xbox editor, an old friend of mine, an old industry head like me, has a lot of knowledge. And we were bouncing back and forth, like, how many times has this happened? It's not very many. It's a few, like NBA Elite 11 and Godfather 2 and some other examples we came up with. So what I said on the show, as you'll remember, Chris, is that these games were printed already. And lo and behold, Cyberpunk 2077 is out in the wild, and it doesn't seem to be a limited thing. So I say that only to warn you guys, with a couple of weeks, 2.5 weeks to go or so, you're going to get this game spoiled if you're not careful. So
yeah.
This is kind of a Last of Us situation. If you care about Cyberpunk 2077 to that extent, be mindful. Be mindful of it. It's out there.
It is wildly simple for those games to just get out of warehouses. I remember when I was working at Sears when Halo 4 came out and a shipment came in like a week or 2 weeks before or something like that, and I was like, wow, I really could just take this. Like there's really nothing stopping me outside of just the base honor system and just hoping that the fear of getting caught. But there's definitely going to be some leaks real soon. Very curious. I'm really curious about about how the base PS4 disc version works, considering they're still kind of, hammering away at this thing.
Yeah, the game might not even really be totally installed, or not installed, but uploaded to the PSN, so it might not even be getting updates yet. The trophies aren't live, so you're putting this game into the platform in a 1.0 setting, which is very rare to play a AAA game. So it's going to be a wild ride, I think. We'll see. We'll find out soon enough. I don't give a flying fuck about the spoilers for that game. I don't even really know what it's about. So
yeah,
you can spoil it all you want.
Yeah, I feel like somebody could tell me something about like, this character does this, and I feel like I'd be like, what? Who?
All I want to make sure is that I have both a penis and a vagina in the game. And as long as I can do that, I think you can do it. I don't know. I think you can mess around with gender to such a degree that you can have, be on the binary. So that's what I want to do in the game.
Yeah, there you go.
Usually I play a straight white male in these games. Well, I want to play what is that? A non-binary? I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm afraid to even say anything more because I'm going to get in trouble. I'm I'm not trying to be insulting, but I'm going to use the wrong terminology and someone's going to get mad at me.
Yeah.
So
they probably don't.
What did I say once about transgender people I said I used the term transgendered and people got really mad at me for that.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know, like you're not supposed to say a person is transgendered, but transgender. And I'm like, I'm not trying to offend you. Gee, why don't you talk to me like I'm a human being and educate me a little bit? All right. Let's see. What else is in here? Oh, as promised, Insomniac, Chris, said they were going to deliver the ability to transfer your saves from Spider-Man on PS4 to Spider-Man on PS5. That is now live. And there's a little quirk in there. Aaron Robson wrote into us about it and said, hey, CNC, I wanted to hear your thoughts on the Spider-Man remastered trophies carrying over to the PS5 version. For myself, I was looking forward to earning these again in the remastered version, and the fact that I can now just do it with one click is a major annoyance. It's another act that degrades the trophy currency and now actually means I won't be purchasing the remastered version. I know the argument is that the option to do it all again is still available for me, but 99% of those who achieve it won't have done that. How do you feel about it? So what Aaron is saying, Chris, and we were speculating about this, remember, was will this pop the trophies for the game automatically? Because we don't have many cross-gen first or second party PlayStation games that have interacted in this way. And in cases we can think of when this happened, the trophies did pop. The biggest example of this is when Sound Shapes was on PS3 and Vita. That was back in 2012. You can transfer a save from one to the other and just get all the trophies automatically. And when the game came to PS4 in 2014, you could do it again to get them all a third time. And yes, I did do that. So I beat Sound Shapes 1 and got 3 platinum trophies. People had brought up to me that there were other first party games like MotorStorm RC that did the same thing, but there aren't that many of them. Also, Sly Cooper 4, apparently, between Vita and PS3. But this is rare, and it sucks that it happens. But, Aaron, you brought it up, and it's what I'm going to do, because I bought, Chris, the special edition of Miles Morales to get Spider-Man, the original one, is I'm going to still play Spider-Man and get the platinum in it, and I'm going to do it the normal way. You don't have to send your saves between the versions of the game, so just don't.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was really looking forward to, too, I was going to play Spider-Man again, and I had never played the DLC. It's all in that package on PS5, so I was going to tackle it all at once. So it does suck, but with first-party platinums, I don't really feel like the game is quite the same. They're making them a little easier to get, and they're fun to get, and so who really gives a shit? That's kind of my stance on that particular thing, because it's an option. It does degrade the experience, but it's not quite as egregious as some of these other things we're seeing in the trophy ecosystem, in my opinion.
Yeah. That's, I don't know. Because I play games on multiple platforms. Like sometimes I'll buy, like if I really like a game enough, I'll buy it on like whatever platform. Like Crash Team Racing, I think I own on everything that it's on. Switch for the portability, Xbox in case I'm home for the holidays, and PlayStation because that's where I got it first. And I got the platinum in that game, and I was doing it kind of. I was playing the Xbox and Switch version, or I guess the Xbox version because that has achievements, and I was thinking to myself like, man, I don't want to do all that again. But I did do it. So it just kind of, I don't know, it does, in my opinion, it kind of sucks not to have that option. Just be like, hey, this is a profile. I know Destiny does that between platforms too. If you sync up your saves, it'll pop the trophies on whatever platform you're on because, I mean, you're just not going to do those again because why really would you? I feel like the whole joy of getting a trophy is kind of getting it for the first time. Like I don't see a point in re-getting the same trophies.
Yeah, it's a thing I've done a few times where I've gotten the platinum trophy in like BioShock twice because it's on PS3 and PS4, and I love BioShock so much that it was like a really enjoyable experience for me to do that. And I'll probably do that again with like BioShock Infinite at some point, and there were a couple of others that I would do that with too. But I was really planning on doing that with Spider-Man just some other time though. I'm not going to do it now. So like when I get back to it, it'll be like a whole new experience to me again anyway. So I hear you, Aaron. I think I'm glad you wrote in about it. It's a bummer. It's a controversy for sure in the trophy ecosystem and the trophy hunting ecosystem. But I don't know. It is egregious in some way, but I feel like the intent of it. First of all, there might not be a way for them to really send the saves between them without doing that. Number one. And the second thing is that I feel like it's actually more egregious to have these games where you buy a game and it's a 10-minute platinum and it's getting you just because of the trophies. Yeah. In some way, someone else wrote into us about this actually, Chris, and was saying like, now that I know you can do this, I can just enjoy the game. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, it's an interesting point. Like you don't, if you have the OCD bug like I do, then it might be actually a benefit to you. All right. A couple other things here to get into. First of all, Shadow Complex, which is a game Chris and I both love from Chair over in Utah. The Xbox 360 game that was later ported to PS4 in 2016. That was one of the 10 games you might remember, Chris, and the most notable of the 10 games that didn't work on PS5. from PS4, and it now does. So if you guys, just a kind of a curiosity, if you're playing Shadow Complex or want to, it now works on PS5, and that is the most notable game on that list. So that knocks that out. And then, Chris, there were a trio of things I wanted to bring up here that aren't quite newsworthy, but I thought might spur some interesting conversation between us here. The first one is a Kotaku article that's pointing to this thing that I guess is making the rounds in Grand Theft Auto circles that is teasing Grand Theft Auto 6. So here's what the Kotaku article says. In part, it says, Middle Mountain Trail is a quiet dirt road located in the middle of nowhere in Virginia, with nothing but trees surrounding it, but according to some Grand Theft Auto fans, it might be a clue connected to GTA 6, the long-rumored sequel to one of the best-selling games of all time. Late last week, Rockstar dropped a small teaser for the next GTA Online update. There wasn't much in the teaser, but eagle-eyed fans spot what appears to be GPS coordinates at the bottom of the video. Okay, so the GPS coordinates, Chris, point, if you put them in the Google map, to this place in Virginia, like they said, and it's a dirt road that seems to make a Roman numeral 6. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a coincidence?
Rockstar is so weird. I could see this being real, but at the same time, like the reality, like this would be a good teaser if this was real. But I feel like Rockstar's incentive to make another Grand Theft Auto is so low that I don't see what the point of it would be. So like I don't know what to make of it. You know what I mean? Because like this seems legit, but also why would it be?
Yeah, it's interesting just from the sense of like Grand Theft Auto 6 has long been rumored. I think it will happen. I think the question is what it will be, right? I think GTA, it could just be an evolution of GTA Online. They won't be able to use that infrastructure forever. It's kind of like people still playing World of Warcraft. It looks like shit. I mean, no matter what you do to it, it's just not, it's not a modern game. So eventually they're going to have to migrate everyone over, right? And so I just feel like my personal take on this is 100% teasing GTA 6. It's too weird to not be like, they put this exact, I'm looking at the screenshot now. They put these exact GPS coordinates, and they lead to a picture of a road that is that is waving in such a way that it looks like it makes a 6. I think that's too weird.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a Easter egg to be a dick, like where someone did it, no one noticed.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing, though. Yeah, I don't see what else it could possibly be. Like, it's definitely like a teaser for this hypothetical thing. But I think my curiosity is in just, like you said, exactly what it's going to be. Like, it could potentially be just a huge kind of not necessarily a part of GTA Online, but maybe something based in GTA 5. But I don't know. It's just so hard to even fathom.
Yeah, it's a weird one. I wanted to bring it up to people because I don't know if it's real or not. I think it is, though.
Yeah.
Another thing here, this one comes from IGN. So Phil Spencer, who we bring up a lot, he's the head of Xbox. He was on a podcast called Decoder, which is on The Verge. And he was talking, this kind of quote has been making the rounds about toxicity in the industry. And here's what he said in part. He said, quote, "The tribalism in the industry, if there was anything that would ever drive me out of the industry, it's actually that." And then the IGN piece says, when he talks about the vocal core, quote, "that just really hates the other consumer product, that's just so off-putting to me. To me, it's one of the worst things about our industry. We're in the entertainment business. The biggest competitor we have is apathy over the products and services games that we build." What do you think of this? This is console tribalism getting worse? Because I feel like I don't know, man. I feel like maybe because I've been around for so long, I feel like it's never been better in some way. Like it was way worse than this in the 90s and in the early 2000s, I feel like. But maybe that's just my interpretation. Maybe I'm just kind of immune to it at this point. But I'm curious what you think as a younger person and someone who's a little newer to the industry.
Yeah, I don't know. In my view, like what I remember being particularly volatile was the mid aughts, 360 versus PlayStation 3. I remember that being like a very very volatile time as far as like console wars go. I think PS4 and Xbox One was a little bit less, although like you could argue a little bit more viral, just because of the nature of like headlines and also just how royally Xbox screwed up that just made perfect fodder for that kind of thing. In my view, in my experience, I haven't seen much of the tribalism thing, but I know it has to exist because it always has and always probably will. And I think just because I'm older and a little bit more detached, and the people around me aren't really taking part in that shit because it's such a young, like high school, like almost elementary school, junior high school level kind of thing that happens. That like maybe it is happening and it is a lot more extreme because social media is so much more rampant, and just the way things are shared on the internet is so different, and maybe I'm just not seeing it because I'm not in that demographic that engages in that stuff. But I could believe, like, if it's coming from the head of Xbox enough that he's willing to like go on record and say something like this, I'd imagine, yeah, it's probably pretty bad.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. On one hand, I feel like it makes him look a little weak because it's like, come on, man. Like, you're the head of this brand. You guys do a great job of being positive. I really love what they're doing with that brand in terms of interacting with others and putting out a positive message and trying to be supportive even of their rivals and stuff like that. I think they're doing that because they kind of have to. But that's kind of where, on the other hand, I was thinking, well, Phil Spencer's kind of been subjected to a lot of negativity since coming in. Xbox has just been on their heels the entire time he's been ahead at their lead. So he's experiencing something that few others experience. And so I do want to give a nod to that as well. But
yeah,
my personal take is that it was way rougher back in the day than it is now. And I think we're on the right path towards more console unity, which is something that he pushes more than basically anyone. And it's why I keep saying that Xbox games will shit, man. There was a story I read that they were saying that 2021 Xbox might be a streaming option on TVs. We're not that far away from them coming to PlayStation. I'm telling you right now. All right. And this final thing I wanted to kind of put out a feel-good thing here for everyone, Chris. It comes from the University of Oxford, one of the great universities in the world, over in Great Britain. And the Oxford Internet Institute released a study that people can go look up on their website. It says, groundbreaking new study says time spent playing video games can be good for your well-being. Now, I think a lot of us inherently know this, that play video games. You and I, the tens of thousands of people that listen to this every week. I think we know that games have been good for us. But I think that this is a really useful thing that you can send to other people. Read if you want, but send to other people that don't believe it. Oxford is very well respected. They went into this with a really deep and coherent study that you can read all about. And they studied and looked into people's well-being based on the amount they play and what they play and all of that. And one of the key findings that they list here, which I think is really interesting, is they say, quote, actual amount of time spent playing was a small but significant positive factor in people's well-being, end quote. I think this is a double whammy of goodness.
Yeah.
Because it means that not only do you not need to play a lot to have a positive interaction with video games, but if you do play a lot, your interaction should just be more positive. It's actually kind of good. So check it out if you want. Over at Oxford. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Oxford. That's where the hell where is Oxford again? Fuck. I know it's in Britain, but like
Oxford, I think, is a place.
Yeah. Oh, straight up. Just like an actual place.
I'm going to look it up right now. Oxford Wiki.
Every time I hear Oxford, I think of Oxnard.
Yeah, Oxford is a county town and only city of Oxfordshire, England. So there it is. It is south of Birmingham and northwest of Reading. It is the home of the University of Oxford.
I had an Xbox Live friend who lived there.
Well, there you go.
Ooh.
He lives in Oxfordshire.
Maybe he's one of these scientists.
Maybe he is. Maybe he's dead.
Yeah, maybe. God. That's morbid.
Final question here comes from Seth Bain before we get into what we're playing. He says, hey, CNC, when is it the appropriate time to say I love you in a relationship? I am not ready, boys, but my girlfriend recently said, quote unquote, I really like falling in love with you, end quote. So I'm just like, and he puts question marks. Does that mean she's in love with me? Does that mean she's just in the process of falling in love with me? Does she even exist? Or is she just a fabrication of my mind? Thanks for all that you do. It's an interesting one. I really like falling in love with you. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah,
I'm sure someone said
it. That would keep me up at night. Like a lot. Like I would be going over that in my head over and over again. Like, what the hell does that even mean?
Yeah, what's that supposed to mean? Like Elaine and
it's like
and Mr. Costanza.
Falling in love with you is fun. Like what?
Yeah, I don't know. This one, she's I don't know. I almost feel like I need more information, but I guess she's falling in love. She's falling in love with you. I don't know.
Yeah, and she enjoys it, but also like what? How do you know? This is so abstract already, but like, are you ever really in a process of falling in love when you and self-aware of it? Like, I feel like by the time you're aware of it, you're already at that point, right? So that's what's strange about it.
Yeah, you're right. It's also a subjective feeling. You fall in and out. So she's in the process of falling in. And Seth, I don't know. It says you're not ready. That's good to know. So I dated a girl once. I've only said I love you to a few women in my life. I'm 36 years old, so it's not like, I've dated girls, but I've only fallen in love, quote unquote, with a few women. And even looking back, you realize that you didn't even love some of these people at all. But a girl I was dating a long time ago when I first started at IGN, we were in the act, and she told me she loved me. And I told her I loved her back, but she didn't hear me.
Oh.
And then like held it in for like a month and then broke it out and was like, you didn't tell me you love me back. And I'm like, no, I did. And we were in a relationship for a long time, and she never believed me that I actually said it back, but I really did. I really did say it back. But she did not hear it.
Wildly frustrating.
Oh, it was awesome. It's a great story. In hindsight, it's a great story.
That's awesome. That is an awesome story.
Turned out I really never loved her, but at the time I thought I did.
Yeah, well, you did say it though.
I did say it. I definitely said it, and she definitely didn't believe me.
Yeah,
like I would bring it up every years later. I'd be like, I did say it. And
I was in a situation once where like I was sending like just like a selfie through like Instagram or one of those photo sharing things, right? I was like, hey, what's up? And then like she thought I was like Skyping some other girl because she saw a reflection in my glasses, and it was the Destiny main menu. And she never believed me that it wasn't that person. I was like, dude, I swear I could point out exactly that this is Nessus, this is Io, that's the Vanguard strikes. I swear. Never believed me.
That's awesome. I love that.
It's wonderful.
Oh, love is a fickle thing. Good luck to you, Seth, out there as your girlfriend falls in love with you. All right, let's get into what we're playing here, Chris. It says you're playing a few games, so I'll let you kick it off. Tell me whatever you want.
Yeah, so I'm playing. This might be a little long-winded, but I'm playing Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, or as I like to write it, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War.
Yeah, I see that here. I hate it. I hate multi-semicolons. I hate it.
It's so bad. But it's another Call of Duty game. I think it's fine. I think it's very reminiscent of the older ones. It's a lot more streamlined than the Modern Warfare reboot was. It's a lot more like straight up run and gun kind of, whatever. It's fine. It's fun. I still feel in my heart of hearts that every single Call of Duty game is essentially the same thing, and there's very little. It feels like Pokemon to me, where it's like, okay, well, here's this again, but it does what it's supposed to do. Runs really well, looks really good. It's crashed on my PS5 once, so that is something to take note of. The adaptive triggers, though, it was the main reason that I got it, because as of right now, there aren't really any shooters available on PlayStation 5 that really make much use out of the adaptive triggers. And I'm a really hardcore FPS guy, and I was like, all right, well, you know what? I'll bite the bullet. I'll jump on this Call of Duty that does it, and I'll admit it does feel really cool to fuck around with the adaptive triggers and just feel the different types of kickback that each weapon gives you. It's really neat. That said, it's really distracting in multiplayer, so every time I go into multiplayer I turn it off. But for the campaign, it's really cool, it's immersive, it's nice.
Yeah, it might even seem like it's a disadvantage to use it in multiplayer.
Oh yeah,
right?
Without a doubt. Yeah, I would certainly. Yeah, if I was playing multiplayer in anything, I would turn the adaptive triggers off, certainly, based on my experience with it.
Now, I see here it says you're playing the Pathless as well, and it's funny because Stephen Short wrote in about this and said, I am no longer the Platless. Has anyone played much of the Pathless? I think it's fantastic, and lots of folks are sleeping on it. Highly recommend it. It's like Journey meets Zelda meets Sonic, meets The Witness, and for some reason, Laura Bailey and Troy Baker do the VO. Well, it's some reason. It's because they're in every fucking video game. We'll talk about that in a minute, but talking about this game, I did download this game. I just have not gotten a chance to play it yet.
Yeah, so it's a smaller title. It reminds me a lot of, I think Journey is accurate. I think you mean Sonic just based on the speed.
Okay.
Because
Sonic.
Sonic. You get a lot of, it's very momentum based, and the whole thing revolves around you kind of running around this big open world, but like kind of like using your bow to hit these kind of floating icons that give you more stamina so that you can glide and kind of chain together really cool, like in really fast dashes and jumps. It is really satisfying to move around in, and it's hard and it's engaging. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of games kind of mess up. I think, Spider-Man and Titanfall are like some of the few games that do it, where they manage to make the act of moving around the space, even when you're not really doing anything, engaging and interesting. I think Death Stranding did a great job of this too. And the Pathless is super similar. It makes a rhythm game out of just moving, and it's really good. And it reminds me a lot of Journey. It reminds me a lot of Shadow of the Colossus, which are like, the Shadow of the Colossus is probably my favorite game ever. So like anything that reminds me of that is already great. But I think it really is gorgeous. I think this might be like one of those sleeper kind of gems that I feel like by the end of the PS5 generation, I feel like people are going to be talking about this as one of those like kind of marquee, kind of cool experiences, because it's really fun. It's really gorgeous. The soundtrack is outstanding. I think it's oh my God, who did the soundtrack? It's somebody.
Wintry.
Yeah. So
yeah.
It's really good. I genuinely recommend it. It is a quieter kind of, softer game than, Call of Duty or, any of these other games. It's a lot more relaxing and a lot more chill, but it can get pretty dire sometimes. It's really good. I think it's like 40, I think.
Yeah, it's $40. And I said that last week that I thought it looked so good that I wanted to buy it before they inevitably discount it later on.
Yeah.
Which is what I ended up doing, and I downloaded it to my PS5 in my bedroom, but I barely use that PS5 yet, so because I kind of want to play in that dark ambience. But yeah, it looks good, and I was surprised. I went to PSN profiles because Stephen Short did say in his letter here that it looks like people are sleeping on it. I'm a little surprised. It seems like people are too, because I went to PSN profiles and there's not a lot of people playing it. I mean, it's not like a huge hit there. Now, PSN profiles is totally opt-in. It's not going to scour and spider all of the PSN, but it's just anecdotal. It doesn't seem like a lot of people are playing it. So it's on PS4 and PS5. So you can check it out on either of those consoles. And then finally, Chris, it says here you're playing Dirt 5. Now we got another letter about this. Aaron Omar wrote into us and said, "Greetings, gentlemen. A couple of episodes ago, Chris stated how he thought something about Dirt 5 just looked fun. I'm happy to report his instincts were correct. It's a great arcade-style rally game with some MotorStorm and Drive Club DNA in it. Codemasters even took the time to implement variable triggers into the PS5 version. As a longtime racing game fan, this is a huge breath of fresh air. Both throttle and brake triggers react accordingly to the surface you're driving on. The brake triggers even kick back as your wheels lock up. This is exactly what I was hoping for with DualSense. I can't wait to see how well Polyphony uses this tech in Gran Turismo 7. Chris, I recommend you check this one out. It'll have to be you since Colin isn't licensed to drive. Keep up the awesome work, guys. I look forward to what CLS is bringing for the new year." Thank you, Aaron. So yeah, Dirt 5, you went and you played it. So talk to us about it.
Yeah, so this is the game. Typically, like, I'll organize these in the write-up in the order of time that I've spent with them. So obviously, I've spent the most time with Call of Duty. I've spent a decent amount of time with the Pathless. And Dirt 5, I jumped in for about two races. And while I didn't really take notice of like what it was doing necessarily with the adaptive triggers, I did notice that I was enjoying myself throughout the entirety of both races. It does feel like really responsive. It's really, something about it just makes sense. The way that they implement brakes and the way that the physics works. I always had a hard time with a lot of those simulation games, like the real Forzas and like some of the more hardcore Gran Turismo things, where it's like it feels like what of driving just doesn't really carry over to how you would drive this thing in a video game. But with this one, it feels really intuitive. It feels really snappy. It does feel more arcadey, obviously, but it also has that bit of realism in the way that the drifts work, and in the way that in the timing of your brakes and in the timing of your drifts, and how fast to accelerate and exactly when. It's really enjoyable. It looks really good. It runs really well. I'm not really huge on, racing games. I think the previous one that I really loved was, my God, one of the Burnouts. I can't even remember which one, back in like probably 05, 06. But, this is enjoyable. And if you're looking for like a racing game to really like showcase what the console can do, I think you can't really do better right now.
Yeah, and just I don't I don't play racing games typically, but once in a while I do. Funny guy, Aaron. So I just wanted to let you guys know I was a big Need for Speed fan back in the day, for instance, but not so much anymore. But yeah, the game looks beautiful, and it seems like people are really enjoying Dirt 5. And just as a little note, it's Codemasters' final release before their 2K deal. So this is, I don't know if they're going to be, I imagine 2K will let Codemasters keep its name because they did that with like Private Division and others, but who knows what's going to happen there. So it's kind of just an interesting little note if you're an industry nerd like me. As far as what I'm playing, Chris, I finally beat Spider-Man Miles Morales. I was surprised. I went into that, the PS5 does that really cool thing now where it seems to at least somewhat accurately track your game time, which is kind of cool if you go into games.
Oh, yeah.
Games mode. And it said I was playing Miles Morales for more than 15 hours, and it felt right because people were telling me the game is short and it takes 5 hours to beat. And I'm like, I don't know. I fucking played this game way longer than that. And it says that I played it for 15 hours, and I still didn't do the post-game stuff. I won't talk about that. I don't want to spoil it. But I got to say, this is a really great game. And I tweeted out about this. Not that I am a comic book fan or a big comic book expert. I like some comic characters, obviously. But I think this version of Miles Morales, I'm only familiar with one other version, which was another charming version in Into the Spider-Verse, which I liked a lot, the movie. This is my favorite representation or characterization of a superhero ever.
Yeah.
And because I love Batman, but I don't like Batman. Like, I don't give a shit about Batman. I like the villains in the world and, all the characters in the darkness. I don't really give a shit about Bruce Wayne at all, actually.
Yeah, Bruce Wayne is incredibly boring.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool, it's fine. Much more interesting stuff in that universe. I always really was drawn to, I know you're such a big Spider-Man fan, I was always really drawn to Spider-Man as a character too, and that goes back to the Tobey Maguire stuff that you and I both enjoyed when we were kids. But I really dug this characterization. I think Miles Morales is likable. He made me almost want to feel, I don't know if I can put this into words, he made me feel like I wanted to be a kid again. Like, he's having fun, he's studying, he's kind, and he's got cool friends, and he's got swagger. And what did that GameSpot reviewer say about him? Did you read that?
Oh my God, no, but I saw the oh my God, the memes. What the hell was it?
He has the swagger of a young black teen or something like that.
Yeah.
But like, I think the writer, by the way, over there is black. I mean, I'm not trying to call him out or anything like that, but
it's just funny wording. The exaggerated swagger of a black teen.
Yeah, it's like, all right, it's okay. So, but nonetheless, like, I just really loved this game. I liked playing it. And I think the biggest thing about it was I feel like it respected my time, and I feel like it respected my wallet. If people are beating this game in 5 hours, I have no idea how you do that and see everything. But nonetheless, I feel like I got $40 worth out of this game. I felt like every minute of my time in the game was respected. Although it's on PS4, the PS5 iteration, the load times are absurd. I remember Micah was watching me playing, and she was like, this is incredible. We've never seen anything like it. Just going from one part of the city to another in a second. It's so cool. So there's a lot of proving. This is like a proving ground for what the PS5 is capable of, at least at this early moment. And I just really want to highly recommend, this is an obvious recommendation, but Miles Morales is great.
Yeah.
And really could be a symbol of, Sony's been doing this for a while. I think we can go back to First Light and some of the Infamous stuff, even Festival of Blood for Infamous 2 and a few others. They've been messing around with standalone DLC, expansion DLC, and then how long and how deep and how much it should cost and all of that. And I think they've kind of hit on something a little cool here. I think it's the similar price or the same price that First Light was, but it felt more robust. It felt more alive and distinct. It was funny. It was well written. It's charming. And someone said it to me on Twitter, but as much as I like Peter Parker, and I like this Peter Parker in this world, it kind of is disappointing that we're not going to have like Miles Morales be the protagonist in the second one, I imagine. So
yeah,
it's almost like a step backwards. It's like, oh, we want Miles.
Yeah. I mean, even just from like a gameplay standpoint, with like the I was talking about this a little bit in like one of the last episodes when I was talking about Miles Morales, where like just the way that he fights and his move set, it is gonna feel like a bit of a step back, going back to a Spider-Man that can't like do those crazy Venom power things. I wonder how they're gonna do it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because that was so fun too. Felt powerful. It was kinetic. It was great. So highly recommended, whether on PS4 or PS5. And I'm gonna go back one day and play it on PS4 and get the platinum there. I'm excited about some of these cross-gen games for that reason, and in the years to come, I'll revisit it, I'm sure. All right, and then I've finally gone back to Final Fantasy VII Remake over the last week or so. I'm on chapter 12 or 13 now. I think there are 18 chapters. It's fucking awesome. I mean, we'll save it for the spoiler cast. I don't know if Chris is going to do it with us, but we'll do it certainly with Maddie and Dustin. It's really exceptional. It's an exceptional game, and I really hope, all I could think about when I was playing it, Chris, and we talked about this back in the spring, was just like, come on, man, stick with it, Square Enix. Like, don't rush this. Even if it takes 10 years, like, do this right. You really did stumble on something here that is not only acceptable, but actually better than the source material. So just stick with it. Don't rush. Even if we have to wait an exorbitant amount of time, do not rush this. Like, massage it. Let's get another part out and see how far we get with that, and so on and so forth. I just don't want them, when we were listening to like Nomura and Katase talk earlier this year, it really seemed like and I don't blame them, but it seems like they were like, want to just be done with this. Yeah. And that was kind of the way they were talking, and I was like, come on, man, you're not really going to like shit out 90% of the game on another and on another disc and just be done, right? Like, you have to do it like this now. You did this. You decided to do this, so don't let us down. So that's kind of where my mind is now, but I'm really excited to continue playing it tonight. And by the way, you brought up Shadow of the Colossus. That's a game I famously never played much of. And we've discussed that, I think, in the past when we talk about Team Eco. But in 2007, when I moved to San Francisco, I had never played the game. My good friend Mark Ryan, who hired me at IGN, brought me to his house. We were messing around with some of his games. Maybe we were messing around with each other. I don't know. We were messing around with some of the games, and he really loves this game. In fact, he's a motorcycle rider, and he has, I guess, the Colossus's weak spot thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
On his helmet, like, custom made or whatever.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so I just wasn't feeling it. This was 13 and a half years ago. I just wasn't feeling it at the time, and I just never went back to it. And so we're going to do a knockback episode, my brother and I, on Shadow of the Colossus Remake, the Bluepoint one from 2018. And so when I'm done with Final Fantasy VII, that's what I'm going to be moving on to. So it's an exciting time for me because that's one of the very rare first or second party games I've really not played much of.
Yeah, it's fucking, well, I can't even talk about it because I'm just gonna gush about it. But I think you'll like it. I know the controls are a little weird. I felt that way too when I started, because I played that game for the first time in 2012. So it was well after, a lot of innovations had been made in controls. And even though I felt it was weird, I feel like if you stick with it and like give yourself a chance or let yourself get used to it, you'll find a fucking stellar game.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. It sounds like something that I'm going to like. It always felt that way. But I've always been kind of tepid on Eco. Like, Team Eco, I think Eco is fine.
Yeah, Eco is fine. Eco is whatever. Yeah. Eco is it's an escort mission, first off. So it's already like starting with like a foot in the grave. In my opinion, even if it is even if it is pretty like artistically really sound, but I think if you like Death Stranding, I think you'll like Shadow of the Colossus.
Cool. Well, I'll have more to say on that soon. But now it's time to get into the news. There's nothing major this year or this week rather. I'm sorry, but there are a few items worth talking about here, no doubt, on this holiday week. So let's begin. Number 1, unfortunately, and as many of you listening well know, PlayStation 5 is virtually impossible to find in the wild. If you didn't secure a pre-order or happen across a random posting or succumb to scalpers, you may have to wait a while. Yet, a recent social media posting from PlayStation indicates that there is hope. Their tweet reads, quote, "We want to thank gamers everywhere for making the PS5 launch our biggest console launch ever. Demand for PS5 is unprecedented, so we wanted to confirm that more PS5 inventory will be coming to retailers before the end of the year. Please stay in touch with your local retailers," end quote. PlayStation 5's launch seems to have outdone PS4's meteoric launch, which itself was on par with PlayStation 2. PS4 and PS2 came out in 2013 and 2000, respectively. However, Sony remains completely mum on just how many units they've sold, which is rare for a company that usually shows eagerness to talk numbers when it has a winner, whether in hardware or software. Thomas Torres wrote into us, Chris, and says, "Good day, boys. When do you foresee the PS5 readily being available at local stores and online? Do you think this is all just a ploy to maximize profits come Christmas, i.e. trickling in supplies this month and then opening the floodgates mid-December? Thanks for all that you guys do." So a few things to talk about here, Chris. Number 1, well, let's talk about Thomas's question first. When do you think PS5 will be, like, you'll walk into a store and see one and be able to buy one?
Probably, I want to guess, like, if I had to guess, honestly, like March. around then. And that I think is like an optimistic kind of assumption or prediction. Like I would find it really hard to believe that you'll see it in December or January. I think March is the most optimistic you could be.
Yeah, I think you are optimistic. I think summer was where my head was at, which is kind of the trajectory that we was on in 2007.
Yeah.
For people that remember, you started to kind of see them in 2007 in the spring and summer. And then you started to kind of reliably find them the holiday season of 2007. And then in 2008, they weren't rare at all anymore. This is different, though, because Thomas asks if they're doing this on purpose. And no, they're not. I don't think they are doing this on purpose. I think they want to sell as many of these things as possible. The reason people ask this question, Chris, is because Nintendo does do this on purpose, and they're totally open about doing it. It's part of their strategy. They've done this since the NES days. So they do artificially minimize their supplies to make it so that when you see something, you buy it. And it works. It totally works for them. And I don't think Sony has never shown that they do this, and I don't think that they're doing it now. I think they're having a legitimate hard time getting these things manufactured, and this is for multiple reasons. Obviously, COVID looms large, and also the shipping of the units from China around the world is going to be difficult because of COVID. But there's also a supply issue. Everyone is competing, as we talked about months ago. Everyone's competing now for the same components, and they're competing on the same market. It could be driving costs up. Sony might not want to pay the cost of entry to get some of these components to build more, and they might have underestimated demand as well, because as we've talked about, there was no reliable pre-orders until very late in the game, so they couldn't even measure what the demand was. They didn't know. I mean, they could kind of read the tea leaves, but they didn't really know. So I think it's kind of a perfect storm of fucked upness for them, and it's good to know that they're going to keep supplying the channels, but it does suck if you didn't get one, because I don't think it's going to be easy to do for some time to come.
Yeah.
I'll also say, Chris, I wanted to touch on this again, because I did mention just scalpers. I tweeted out earlier this week to just kind of get a feeling on what people's thoughts were. I got hundreds of people writing back to me about this, about if they bought a scalped one, if they saw one, if they feel like they're really selling. One guy wrote in and said he went on eBay and basically went on a kamikaze mission with his account to bid on a bunch of them and got his account suspended, but screwed up a bunch of auctions and stuff. But I feel like maybe I was giving short shrift to those who scalp when we were talking about it, because I was thinking, I wrote out to someone, if I got a console, not ill-begotten, but I just went and I pre-ordered it and I didn't want it anymore, and it was $500 and I knew I can get $1,000 for it. There was a time in my life, first of all, $500 is a lot of money. It's always going to be a lot of money to me and to you. But there was a time in my life where that would have changed my life for a month or two, $500. And so maybe even though we want to not pull punches on the scalpers, I feel like we have to differentiate between the people that are organized and using bot farms and getting tons of them, and then the people that are maybe pre-ordered one or two and wanted to unload one of them to get a little extra pocket change from a person who can afford it. And a lot of people who were talking to me that sold them said that they were selling them to doctors and nurses and people with money, moms that didn't want to compete. One person was saying the extra $500 for him was just the cost of doing business to not worry. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. So it's a pretty, not that this question has anything to do with scalping per se, but I did want to present, if not a more accurate picture, a more fair picture of the many sides, because there are people that definitely use bot farms and have 50 of them, and that's wrong. But I don't know if it's so wrong for a person to say, I pre-ordered from Walmart, I pre-ordered from Target, I didn't do anything wrong, and I want one of them and I'm going to resell the other one. I don't know that I necessarily begrudge the person doing that.
I think scalping as a word kind of requires the intent. You know what I mean? I feel like that's kind of a part of what scalping is. If you're buying, if you're scalping, that means you've bought several PlayStations with the intent to sell them for higher prices. That's the whole reason you've bought it. If you pre-ordered a console and you don't want it anymore for whatever reason, or I don't know, some mix-up happened where you just got, I don't know, inexplicably you got some order that you didn't, I don't know, any number of reasons that you could happen across, a console that you want to get rid of that you don't necessarily want anymore, and you're selling it for a little bit more money. I think that's, I feel like that's different Because I feel like there are enough people out there who are buying these things with the intention of scalping them, and that, I think, is the main issue. I don't have a problem with anybody buying a machine and then being like, maybe I'm not feeling this, actually. And then just getting rid of it.
Yeah, I guess to me, I just feel like I'm against doing it for a gratuitous profit. Some people were saying, like, I did it for $100 profit or whatever. I'm like, I probably would have paid $100 over. And frankly, if I couldn't get a PS5, I'd probably be scalping them myself. Not selling, but buying, because I would need to do that. But I generally don't want to participate in this. But in reading people's responses, I just realized that it was a little more granular than maybe I was giving it credit to. A lot of people happy to spend the money. A lot of people need the extra money, and so on and so forth. So I'm like, okay, well, all right. I don't want to be just so rigid that I'm not presenting everything. So I'm glad I did that. I'm personally still kind of against it, but I know that a lot of people, this is their only option, and people can afford it. Yeah. So I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there. All right. Number 2 here is an interesting one. If you're a virtual reality fan, we already knew based on some reporting from outlets like Bloomberg that Sony is currently working on a successor to PlayStation VR, which first launched for use with PS4 in 2016. Now, thanks to some reporting by Dutch gaming website Let's Go Digital, we've been given the first look at what the headset might be. Let's Go Digital found recent postings from Sony in the database of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, which shows schematics for and information about a new headset to be used not only with PlayStation 5, but also with PC. Stephen Osman, the head of PlayStation's R&D outfit, often called Magic Lab, is listed as the primary inventor of the device, and there's a lot of new tech referred to in the filings. The biggest takeaways are perhaps the device's lack of bulk and weight, however, along with its emphasis on user comfort and user experience, both of which are questionable with PSVR, being highly reliant on a user's own sophistication with the hardware and expectations for the experience. None of this means anything will come of these particular filings, of course, but it's simply more evidence that the rumors were true and that we'll indeed be getting a PS5-centric PSVR unit, or so it appears. The timing of the filings is serendipitous, considering Sony also recently revealed a brand new so-called Mega Pack for PSVR that will give players 5 games, the headset, and the camera, all for PS4, though the bundle also comes packed with the adapter needed to play on PlayStation 5. The 5 games this new bundle comes with are Blood and Truth, Moss, Astrobot Rescue Mission, Everybody's Golf VR, and PlayStation VR Worlds. Unfortunately for Americans, Canadians, and some others, however, the bundle is only set to be available in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Jason T. Jones wrote into us, Chris, and says, hey guys, now that the PS5 is out and about, when do you think we'll get an official announcement of PSVR 2? I know you all haven't been big on VR lately, but I really believe it could take off this gen. Happy holidays. All right, so knowing what we know now, Chris, when do you think the PSVR 2 will be revealed and released?
Oh my God. Man, I think... I feel like I still wouldn't say that it's soon. You know, I don't know if it'll be... I don't think next year you're going to see it at all, honestly. Like, that would have been my guess before all of this crazy stuff, but knowing how difficult it is to get hardware out and how difficult it is to find the components to build, I don't know. Like, I think 2022 is probably when you'll see it.
I think so too. I think it's got to be like kind of a mid-gen thing. I don't think you need to disrupt PS5 initially.
Yeah.
Remember, we got PS4 in 2013, PSVR, and PS4 Pro in 2016. So on that timing, 2022, 2023. I agree with you. I don't think we'll see it or even hear of it next year. And it's worth noting that Sony still has not acknowledged that this thing exists, but now we know for sure that it does because these filings exist. So you guys can go into the USPTO and even see the schematics of what it looks like. It looks super light, and we don't know how many wires it's going to have. That's the big thing, if it's tethered or anything like that. So we still have a lot to get into. But that particular filing is interesting because they talk a lot about comfort and haptics and using all that stuff for comfort. Because PSVR is a little shaky, let's say, and hard to, you can't know if people are seeing what you want them to really see. It's frustrating. So you need to have the unit do it for you. And it seems like maybe they're working on that. So something to keep an eye out on. Number 3, Sony has revealed December's free PlayStation Plus games, the monthly offering of freebies given to all current PS Plus members. This month's offerings are a little underwhelming, though there's something here for many of you. For starters, Worms Rumble, which launches on December 1st on both PS4 and PS5, will be free on PS Plus right off the bat. It's the most recent iteration of the Worms franchise, which began back in 1995 from developer Team 17. PS4 players will also get access to Avalanche Studios' 2018 open-world third-person shooter Just Cause 4, and Final Strikes in EA's complete dud, the multiplayer-centric Rocket Arena, which first launched on PS4 this past July. So those are your PS Plus games for the month. I think it's an incredibly weak offering, but it's probably up to your taste. I don't know.
Yeah, this isn't exactly fantastic. Worms Rumble looks really weird. Like, I love Worms, and even I was looking at this like, what? It's like they made a Smash Brothers, but it's Worms.
Yeah, I never understood Worms. Team 17 has been around forever. They've been doing that series forever, but it's just never been my thing. I don't even really quite it's cool because it kind of reminds me a little bit of a Pixel Junk, where it's something always a little different, which is cool. But
yeah, Worms is like a primarily like a multiplayer thing anyway. So like, it doesn't surprise me that you wouldn't be that into it. It was more about just like, hey, I'm gonna name my worms after all of the assassinated presidents, and then fight a bunch of people online and be like, oh no, how could you do that to JFK? You know, like, that's kind of half the fun of it. No, Neil Druckmann.
Don't do it. All right. Number 4, The Last of Us HBO series has been officially given a full season order, meaning that we will indeed be seeing a live action adaptation of Joel and Ellie's story as seen in Naughty Dog's critical and commercial smash hit PlayStation exclusive 2013's The Last of Us. As earlier reported, Neil Druckmann, the creator of The Last of Us, the 2 games writer and VP of Naughty Dog, will be writing the show himself alongside Craig Mazin, who recently delivered HBO a hit with his 2019 miniseries Chernobyl, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Cheryl Strauss, who previously worked with Mazin on Chernobyl and who also worked on HBO's most famous show ever, Game of Thrones, will act as executive producer alongside Evan Wells, who is the president of Naughty Dog, and Assad Kizilbash, who heads up Sony's internal PlayStation productions. The show, which has been rumored and in the works on and off for several years, was officially confirmed earlier this year. The Last of Us came to PS3 in 2013 and PS4 in 2014, and its sequel, The Last of Us Part 2, launched exclusively on PS4 earlier this year. It's one of 2020's best-selling and most critically acclaimed games. So we're getting it. I'm not excited about this.
Yeah.
But Neil's involved, Evan's involved, there's some talent from HBO involved. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I still don't think this needs to happen, though. And if it did have to happen, I wish it was a different story. You know? Yeah,
that's kind of the main thing, right? Where it's like a lot of these TV shows could be used to flesh out like the world of a universe, or like just other characters in a big established lore. But like the fact that you would see, the fact that you would watch a TV show about the first game, that's just basically like actors doing the first game with like maybe like a little bit more, side stuff to kind of fill out whatever it would need to make a full season. Like I don't see the desire here. Like I don't see the point really.
All right, let's see here. Number 5. A new PlayStation 4 game has been announced that no one expected from a franchise no one thought would live again. The game is called Neo: The World Ends With You, an action RPG set to launch on both PS4 and Switch in the summer of 2021. It's a direct sequel to the beloved but since somewhat forgotten action RPG The World Ends With You, which Square Enix brought to Nintendo DS in the summer of 2007. The original DS game was largely developed by a Japanese team called Jupiter, which today largely makes smaller downloadable games for Nintendo Switch in particular. It's unclear if they'll be working alongside Square Enix on the sequel as well, or if another team entirely is taking the reins. It's worth noting that the original game was ported to Switch in 2018. With the sequel coming to PS4 in 2021, it seems likely we'll see that port on PlayStation before long. Do you remember this game, The World Ends With You?
I remember the name, but I never played it.
Yeah, it was a really stylish and somewhat popular game that year, but it just went away, and I kind of hadn't thought about it in a long time. So this is a good sign, I think, for us with some of these Square Enix games that are actually stranded on Nintendo hardware in particular. Like, there are, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance and Advance 2 are both on there, and some others where you're like, man, maybe you're going to start kind of migrating these things off. And when I saw that the original came to Switch, I was like, well, that's clearly going to come to PS4. So
yeah.
So I will give that a go when the time comes. So yeah, summer of 2021, Neo: The World Ends With You.
Yeah, I remember it looking like Kingdom Hearts for some reason. It does, which is why
the box art is very reminiscent, like the whole the aesthetic of it.
Yeah,
if you guys go look it up. Number 6. I almost said number 5. Number 6. No, it doesn't seem like we're going to get any Red Dead Redemption 2 single-player DLC, but if you're a fan of Red Dead Online, the game's multiplayer component, then this may interest you. This may interest you especially if you've not yet begun to play. Beginning on December 1st, you can download Red Dead Online as a standalone game via the PlayStation Network, and it'll only cost you $4.99 until February of 2021. So if you just want to play online and you don't want to purchase, download, and or play the full experience, you'll have the option to do just that. I think Red Dead Online might be struggling a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, that was kind of on the table, I think, the whole time. I think inherently, like, the Old West is just not as interesting a setting for, like, a multiplayer-centric kind of living, breathing world, as opposed to, like, you know, Grand Theft Auto 6, which has, like, skyscrapers and jets and fast cars and all sorts of guns and nonsense. Like, comparatively, like, yeah, I could totally see why Red Dead multiplayer would be not necessarily being... It wouldn't be the hot ticket item.
It's worth noting it's all relative, too. I'm sure Rockstar's performance with Red Dead 2 Online is much better than many online games, but when you compare it to GTA Online, it seems like the expectations are not being met. So, $4.99, standalone download. It'll be available as of the time you're hearing this, maybe December 1st. All right. Number 7, a new subscription option is coming to one of the world's most popular, lucrative, and ubiquitous games, Fortnite. Word comes by way of a post on the official PlayStation blog, though this subscription option is coming to other platforms too. The subscription is called Fortnite Crew, and according to Michael House, the community coordinator for the game, quote, if you're the kind of Fortnite player who likes owning the battle pass with each new season or adding new items to your locker, this new subscription is particularly practical, end quote. The subscription costs $11.99 a month or your local equivalent, and for that price, you'll have automatic access to the current season's battle pass, receive 1,000 V-Bucks per month to spend in-game, new costumes, and more. Subscriptions can be garnered in-game. Fortnite first launched in the summer of 2017. That seems like a really high cost for the subscription. You would think you would want to make it like something people forget about. Like, I get my bill from Apple every month for my storage for my cloud, and it's like $199. And I'm like, all right, whatever. Who gives a shit? It's like, you would think you would want to do that.
Yeah, like the highest I would want to see for something like this is like $4.99 max, you know? Like there's no way, like $12 to play Fortnite, like a game that I've been playing for free for the last like 3 years. I don't know. This seems to me like Fortnite's probably getting some of its audience siphoned away by other games, and they're trying to make up some cost.
Indeed. Yeah, it seems like Fortnite is kind of starting to fall in popularity too, which I think is good. Not because I have anything against Fortnite per se, but I just think these young people especially need to now be introduced to some other games. Let's play some different video games and expose yourself to more than just fucking Fortnite.
Yeah, honestly, I appreciate the fact that Call of Duty had Warzone because, or that Battle Royale thing, because I feel like it siphoned some people off of that and also introduced them to like, hey, this is actually a game as well, like a proper one. Maybe they got that appetite now.
I don't. People aren't ready for that.
Nah.
Number 8. It looks like the recently delayed Far Cry 6 may have a new release date if a leaked Microsoft Store posting is accurate, which it most certainly is. That listing posts Far Cry 6 is launching on May 25th, 2021, having originally been scheduled for February 18th, 2021. It will launch natively on both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. Far Cry 6 is under development at Ubisoft Toronto, the team that also led development on 2018's Far Cry 5, as well as the recently launched Watch Dogs Legion. As its title suggests, Far Cry 6 is the 6th core Far Cry game, a series which began back in 2004, originally under the guidance of European developer Crytek. Far Cry 6 is also the 6th Far Cry game since the series was reworked, beginning with 2012's Far Cry 3, a run which also brought us 2016's Far Cry Primal and 2019's Far Cry New Dawn. Well, I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah.
May 25th.
I hadn't considered this until reading it out like this, but it's kind of fascinating that Crytek just makes all these games with like Cry in them, and then like Far Cry is just this thing that's so removed from Crytek, even though it has like a key component of their name still in it.
Yeah, it's interesting. At some point, they worked with Ubisoft and then lost control of the IP. I don't really know exactly what happened there, but Crytek's long been a shadow of its former self anyway. So.
Yeah.
Number 9. It looks like Japanese publisher and developer Square Enix is doing something a lot of other major corporations are doing, though it's seemingly the first company of its size in our industry to do it. It's going to let all of its employees have the option to work from home, at least in Japan. Word comes by way of an English language posting on Square Enix's Japanese website, which notes that all employees will be able to work from home on a full-time basis starting on December 1st. Their press release reads in part, quote, "Rather than utilizing work from home solely as a means of preventing infections during the current pandemic, the company will establish it as a permanent and core program among the working styles it accommodates. In so doing, the company hopes not only to create a flexible and diverse working environment, but also to further bolster productivity and help employees achieve the optimal work-life balance," end quote. The publisher admits that this is a great way to retain their current talent and attract new talent, especially that which couldn't or wouldn't work within their various Japanese headquartered offices. They expect an immediate 80% adoption of work from home, though they do note that this means that employees will be working at home at least 3 days a week, making them flexible for office work as needed. That expectation of an 80% adoption rate comes from an internal survey, which indicated 4 in 5 employees were happy working from home. Square Enix, founded in 2003 after the merger of one-time arch-rival companies Squaresoft and Enix, employs several thousand people in Japan. Will Selfridge wrote into us on Patreon, Chris, and he says, "Hey, CLS boys, it's your friendly neighborhood law student with some interesting video game labor news. Word is that Square Enix is going to allow employees to work from home permanently beginning on December 1st. Legal and HR issues aside for Square's lawyers, what effect do you think this will have on Square's games moving forward? Do you expect this to slow down or hinder their development? Or do you think that this might have some positive effects that could benefit development? I know Chris has mentioned work from home issues affecting 343, and obviously CD Projekt Red has been on virtual fire since the pandemic started. Will this new policy only make things worse? Or is this much to do about nothing? Would love any insight you might have. Cheers from a studying law student." Thanks, Will, for writing in. What do you think of this? Square Enix. First of all, the fact that the PR statement was in English indicates to me that this is going to be a worldwide thing for them eventually. And
yeah.
What's interesting is that it's going to affect their studios presumably too. So Crystal Dynamics and others. What do you think about this idea of Square Enix basically going totally remote? They're a big company.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. I think game development isn't is one of those things that fortunately can be done remotely, and oftentimes is. I know there's a lot of I know there's an Xbox studio, the one that makes Ori has always been that way.
Oh yeah, Moon Studios.
Yeah, Moon Studios has always operated in that way, and they make phenomenal shit. So it's not. I wouldn't say that working from home is necessarily the thing that that ruins games or that affects a studio's productivity. I think what affects a studio's productivity is how familiar they are with that type of work environment, how well they're able to balance that kind of thing, and also just communication and how it gets and how communication can be impacted by a shift of that magnitude. I think working from home is fine. I think it's totally fine. I just think you have to have I feel like people underestimate how weird it is, and I think they have to be kind of not taught how to work from home, but given some kind of blueprint, because it's really not as simple as I'll just set my own hours and I'll just do this stuff and it'll be fine because I'm at home. It's like, no, you gotta set yourself a workspace and a place where you only do work, so like you don't get your shit mixed up. It's really weird. Especially if you're living in like a limited kind of space, that stuff's like super important, and that would go. Just learning about that stuff and learning about the strategies would go a long way in mitigating the damage that could potentially come from such a vast policy being implemented.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about Studio MDHR in a little while as well. They did Cuphead remotely. To me, it's just about culture and setting the stage for this to be possible. Anyone can do this. You just have to rework, like Chris is saying, you have to have a workflow that makes the most sense. Producers are going to be the ones that are going to have the most difficult time with this because they're going to really have to wrangle cats now. And it's going to be complicated, but they can do it. And I think that the net benefit for Square Enix and others doing this is simple. Like, they can eventually start dealing with the idea of abandoning their real estate. And I've been to Square Enix's headquarters in Japan. It's fucking huge. And I can't imagine how much it costs. And it's just be able to slowly say like, we can start renting this space out, or maybe sell this building one day and like not have this incredible overhead. And we can just have office spaces and meeting spaces when we need them. And in a few years from now, they might be in a position where they're like, fuck it. Like we we were interrupted by this initially, but this is very much the way we do work now. And so I really am interested to see how this all turns out for them. And I'm also interested to see Square Enix is probably like the 5th or 6th biggest publisher. I want to see the guys above them and see how they react. If anyone, like if Activision does something like this or Ubisoft, that would be a pretty big deal, because those are the kinds of companies that employ not 4,000 or 5,000 people, but like 8 or 10 or 15,000.
Yeah.
EA as well. All right. And then finally, number 10 is a wrap up, Chris. Website Gamatsu reports recently delayed horror game Dark Complete Edition now has a firm release date of PS4 on December 4th. PSVR game Swords of Gargantua is set to launch on December 8th. Free-to-play game Vigor has been delayed slightly and will now launch on both PS4 and PS5 this holiday season. Action RPG Sword of the Necromancer has been delayed out of 2020 and will now come to PS4 on January 28th, 2021, with a native PS5 version coming at some point after that. Fantasy game Gods Will Fall is coming to PS4 on January 29th, 2021. Pixelated side-scroller Olaja is coming to PS4 in early 2021. Side-scrolling Speed Limit is coming to PS4 in February of 2021. Action game The Last Kids on Earth and the Staff of Doom, I love that name, is coming to PS4 in the spring of 2021. Motocross game Monster Energy Supercross, the official video game 4, is coming to PS4 and PS5 on March 11th, 2021. That's 3/11 day. And card-based RPG Deck of Ashes is coming to PS4 in the second quarter of 2021. Website Push Square reports that horror game Martha is Dead is coming to both PS4 and PS5 at a yet undetermined point in 2021. The official PlayStation blog reports so-called combat adventure game Unto the End is coming to PlayStation 4 on December 9th, and that a native release of Ubisoft's popular Rainbow Six Siege, first launched on PS4 in 2015, is coming natively to PS5 beginning on December 1st, playable at 120 frames in scaling 4K resolution or 60 frames at 4K. Speaking of Ubisoft, the publisher revealed that online portions of Watch Dogs Legion for both PS4 and PS5 will be delayed until 2021, while developer Studio MDHR, the brilliant minds behind Cuphead, announced that the Delicious Last Course DLC for the game, promised for 2020, will now come out in 2021. And finally, developer 4A Games confirmed that it's bringing a native version of Metro Exodus to PS5 in 2021, and that is also hard at work on the 4th game in the franchise. I was reading 4A Games' post about this, Chris. I did not know that the studio's name was named because the founders all have the 4 of them all have A's as their first names.
Oh.
Hence 4A Games. I did not know that.
That's cool.
So a little piece of information for you. All right, Chris, it's time to talk about our intriguing games of the week. I leave it to you.
Yeah, what is that? What is it? You were a PS Plus.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll go first. So there are not many games.
It confused me, so I was like, what? Wait, what?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll go first if you want. So, yeah, I looked at the new games coming out this week, and I'm like, well, there's nothing. It's Thanksgiving week when we're recording this, and this goes live on Patreon. There's not really much, from my point of view, of interest coming out. I wanted to encourage people to get on PlayStation Plus and get their subscriptions up, because there are a lot of good deals going on right now for PlayStation Plus, and then you can start downloading games. The offering for December is not so strong, but if you do it now, if you hear this before the end of the month, you'll be able to get Bug Snacks, which is a good game on PS5 and others. So I felt like instead of recommending someone pay 10 or 15 bucks for a game, go spend 30 bucks or whatever, or 35 bucks and go get a year's PS Plus. Mm-hmm. This is the time to do it before you're distracted by other shiny things. That's why I did it. But I go back to you, Chris, to talk about the game you put here.
Yeah, so I put Katamari Damacy Reroll on here because this has been out for a while. Obviously, this is an old game. I'm pretty sure I have it. I think I have it on Switch, but it came to PS4 or PS5, I guess, in also this week, and it's more Katamari, man. Katamari is just such a weird, enjoyable kind of nonsense game that if you can get it for free, like absolutely just get it. You know, like it's such a weird, kooky kind of bizarre, very Japanese kind of arcadey experience, and if you've never seen it before, I urge you to look it up. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have never heard of this before, but like just look it up. You're a little weird cylinder-headed creature, and you go rolling up the world in a big magnetic ball, and it's wonderful. Yeah,
the Katamari games were really big in the PS2 era, especially.
Oh yeah, huge.
It's cool to see it. They've kind of quietly been on PlayStation platforms. They were even on Vita, I think, at launch with the Katamari game. So yeah, go check it out if that's what makes you happy. They're really fun to play and quite adorable. We do have a tangentially related question here from Joseph Barker, who says, "Hey, Colin and Chris, what are your thoughts on the redesign of the PlayStation Store? Personally, I don't like the redesign, as I was used to all the categories on the PS4 store. Now, when you search PS4 games, you can't open a sales category anymore. It's actually worse than the PS4 store. I don't know that I use it like that, Joseph, so I hear you. But from my experience, Chris, I've been really impressed with how awesome it is. And I kind of have to wrap my mind around how quick it is. Because the old store on PS4, as we've talked about ad nauseum, it just sucks from my perspective. It never loaded and never worked. You always had to reboot your console. So I like this new store. I'm wondering what you think of the PS5's iteration. It's just all built in. It's not even an app or anything you open. I think it's kind of neat.
Yeah, no, I think it's a massive improvement. I think maybe some of Joseph's problems probably just hinge on it being new and it being kind of like, just not exactly the same as what your muscle memory has been used to. I think that might be a problem. But in my experience, I've had nothing but good experiences with the new PlayStation Store. When I was looking for Dirt 5 and the Pathless, I found it really quick. I didn't even think about, a UI is bad if you're thinking about it. Like that's typically like these kinds of things should really kind of fade into the background. You shouldn't even take notice of it. It's the same thing with like menu design and all this stuff. It's like this kind of stuff should be unnoticeable. It's when you notice the things about it that there's typically a problem to be fixed. And I didn't notice anything on the PS5 store that I would change or that gave me pause or that was inconvenient or that took me like way further away than where I needed to end up. Whereas on the PlayStation 4 store, all the time I would just be thinking, God damn, how do I find this thing? It was just always such a bitch. I never had to reboot my console. Like that was never necessarily an experience that I had to deal with, but it was always really slow. It rarely loaded well, and it was just cumbersome. And I don't feel that at all with this store.
I agree. I know that people have really specific use cases, and I know Joseph's talking about his, but just for the way I use it, I agree with you. I think it's a quantum leap above where it was, and we've come so far. If you want a bad store experience, just go use the Vitas still. They're really trying hard. We will not say no. We will not die. So you cannot force us to die on PlayStation Vita, even though you can't find anything to buy there anymore. All right. Were you going to say something? You took a breath as if you were going to say something. I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, yeah, like I remember I tried to look for stuff to buy on the Vita when I got it. And I just resorted to, I just went on Amazon and bought a physical copy instead.
Yeah, it's just easier that way because they're fucking annoying on that hardware.
Yeah.
But we have to just be thankful that that they're still allowing anything to go on there. And we'll have a little announcement soon because my new game will be on Vita, and that will be announced very, very soon indeed. All right, Chris. Tradition dictates we end every episode of Sacred Symbols with 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas from the audience on Patreon. Patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. A nice and light way to end our show each and every week. Turd Ferguson, we haven't heard from him in a while, have we?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
He wrote in and said, hey guys, with Bluepoint Games proving that they're clearly the top remake studio in the industry, what games would you like to see them tackle next? For me, the easy choice is Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear Solid 2. There's not going to be another core Metal Gear Solid game anytime soon, if ever. Both games could use a shiny makeover with updated control schemes and quality of life improvements. If Konami is willing to license the IP to Sony, I think Bluepoint will knock it out of the park. Now, we have to kind of preface this. As you said this last week, and it's important to note, Chris, that they might not want to keep doing this. But, and what I mean by that is Bluepoint might want to make a game. And they've not gotten an opportunity to do that in a long time. So that might be what they're leading up to, but I kind of hope that they do keep remaking games because it's what they're good at. And it seems like that they attract the talent that can go into source code to look at games and improve them. And it's really great. And I think Metal Gear Solid would be a great place for them to go. It's ironic because they ported Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 to PS3 and the Vita. And the only time they ever did work outside of PlayStation, Bluepoint, they ported Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 to Xbox 360. They're the guys that did that as well.
Yeah.
That's the only time they ever worked off the console or off the PlayStation consoles. And I guess my mind with them, Chris, for Bluepoint just goes to not only Metal Gear, but just everything Konami. It would be cool if they did a licensing deal with Sony so that Bluepoint can have access to Castlevania, Silent Hill, and all of the other stuff that they could, and obviously Metal Gear, all the kind of cool stuff that they can do something with.
So
that's kind of where my head's at. I like the Metal Gear Solid answer. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I agree with that answer. I would say, just because they're so good at remaking these games, I'd be phenomenally curious as to what they would do with something like Ape Escape, or just something like really weird, just something that's not like realistic. Like, oh hey, I know Demon Souls is like very, it's like, oh, the bricks look so real, but like I wonder how that talent would translate. Especially like, imagine all those monkeys with ray tracing,
Oh my goodness. It'd be unbelievable.
It'd be nightmare inducing, probably.
Yeah. Well, Sony has shown a propensity to do these smaller remakes too. Obviously, Other Ocean remade Medieval.
Yeah. In all likelihood, you'll probably see like a studio like that do Ape Escape if they ever do anything with Ape Escape. But like my real answer would have been like Metal Gear Solid, like the original, just because I feel like the original is probably like aged the worst and would stand to gain a lot from a remake. I think Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 still, they look rough, but I think they're still very playable. Whereas the first one, I feel like it's like particularly, that's an elderly game.
Certainly. All right, thank you, Turd, for writing in. Ian Savage wrote in and said, hey, CNC, and maybe D, he's not here. I cannot be silent any longer as I must respond to your combined skepticism of God of War Ragnarok and its 2021 release date. I think you're talking about God of War Valhalla. There's ongoing theorizing online about the game's lore, especially when it comes to Norse mythology, that because of the events that the 2018 God of War ended on, the state of Midgard has entered into what is known as Fimbulwinter, the 3-year time period that takes place before the end of the world, aka Ragnarok. So it makes sense that the God of War sequel would release 3 years after the original. Obviously, with COVID, there has been a huge impact in game development, but Sony Santa Monica must be confident in their engine and dev cycle to promise this kind of release window. What say you boys? Best from the frigid Pacific Northwest. Thank you, Ian, for writing in. So this is interesting. I've been seeing people talk about this, but it seems kind of arbitrary to me. I don't really know that matters. But
yeah,
if this is true, then this is definitely a PS4 game, and that would be a massive disappointment, although it would indicate that with our... Remember, we were kind of theorizing with Cory Barlog recently that he's not working on this game. I feel like he isn't, and I feel like this is maybe would be some sort of confirmation that they're quickly getting this game out so they can move on to something else, which I would be way more excited about, because I like God of War 2018 a lot, but I kind of want to see them do something new. They're obviously going to do this first. So I like what you're saying, Ian, but I don't think the game will come out in 2021. I don't know that they can make it. Maybe that was the intention. Maybe you're right. We'll never really know. Or maybe we'll know in the postmortem. But what do you think about this, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure internal like kind of like marketing would be like, oh, hey, wouldn't it be cool if like, yeah, because Fimbulwinter lasts 3 years. Wouldn't it be cool if we like released it in like 3 years? Wouldn't that be neat? I don't think in-game lore has anything really tangible to do with when a game comes out. Like there are games that are released 3 years apart that take place decades apart. They're not going to wait like 20 years to put out a game that takes place 20 years after the first game just because it would be a neat marketing gimmick. Like I don't think that's how anything really works. And the simple reality is that, when did God of War 2018 come out? Like March or April?
Yeah, it was spring.
Yeah, so even if they were really trying to hit this kind of 3-year thing, they would have to get this game out by March, and for certain that's not happening. Like, we know for certain that's not happening. If they waited till fall, well, how's that gonna go with Horizon? Or how's that gonna go with any of the other games that are coming out next year it's quite a crowded year already for PlayStation. So like I just don't see
I agree.
I just don't see any room for this game, and I don't see any need to rush it out if it's clearly not ready, dude. Like, if this game was coming out in 2021, we would have seen more than a logo. Like, they wouldn't just sit there with like, oh, hey, here's the logo of our next game, and it's coming out in a year. We saw like footage of The Last of Us, and that still took years after we got that footage before we actually like got to play it.
I disagree with you from the general point of like, where would this fit? We still don't know. Like, we know Horizon's coming and second party games like Returnal Certainly there are going to be third party. Well, first of all, we also know that there are going to be third party exclusives, timed exclusives like Ghostwire Tokyo and more imminently Deathloop. So I don't know where this fits. I think you're right. And I just think maybe the only rush, the impetus to get this game out in 2021 would be is if it is a PS4 game, then you kind of do need to get it out as soon as possible. I think it would be weird to keep releasing PS4 first party games in 2022, but they might be in a position to do that, and Horizon might get delayed to 2022, and we know it's coming to both as well, so who the fuck knows? But I like where your head's at. Talk about Fimble Winter. Like a fucking nerd. All right. We got a lot of letters about this next one, but we'll go with Ruben Barrett, who wrote into us and said, "Hey, Colin and Chris. I'm probably going to get flamed for saying this, but I think it needs to be said. Microsoft are showing themselves to be the true thought leaders in the world of video games. I can't help but feel this way after Sony backtracked their quote-unquote we believe in generations mantra. And with the news that Sony might be coming out with a Game Pass equivalent in the future, it seems all but certain to me. Xbox makes the hard choices, gets shit for it, then when the dust settles, Sony follows suit. On top of this, Xbox is light years ahead in the world of streaming content with xCloud, distribution of content on other platforms, and myriad of other things. I know Sony has the better games and all of that, but I'm actually feeling like history is repeating itself with the cautious Japanese at Nintendo and brash Americans at Sega of America. What do you think of this sacrilegious idea? Am I dead wrong, or is there some truth to this?" Well, I think there's definitely some truth to what you're saying, Ruben. Sony has copied a lot from Microsoft. They definitely have over time let Xbox lead the way. Think about...
trophies.
Well, yeah, trophies and achievements is a great example. But even earlier than that, it was a really radical thing in 2001 for Xbox to not come with a phone port. This is something that people forget about. But Sony, when they released the next year in 2002, when they released their modem adapter, it had a phone port and an Ethernet port. And Microsoft was like, phones have no place in the future of video games and of internet connectivity. That was kind of Microsoft's advantage because they had a firsthand look at that through their software. But Sony later succumbed, and as we saw with PS3, obviously it was going to have a phone line, but they just let them do all the hard things first. It's the same thing with Xbox Live. It's the same thing with downloadable games and arcade, the Xbox Arcade and all of that. Mm-hmm. I've long said this. I think Ruben says, and he kind of like glosses over it. He's like, I know Sony has the better games, but well, Sony does have the better games, and that's the biggest thing. Maybe that changes. I don't know, but they definitely have better games than Microsoft, and that is the biggest thing. But I kind of think Ruben's right that Microsoft gets a lot of shit, and then Sony kind of gets to see how everything settles and then follow suit. And he's right. I mean, Jim Ryan did talk about how they believe in generations. That's obviously not true anymore. Maybe it never was. And then the Game Pass thing, like they did just say the Game Pass doesn't make financial sense. And now he's talking about like they'll have something to say about that. That comes from a Russian language interview, by the way.
Yeah.
So what do you think about what Ruben has to say here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's truth to it. I think in large part they have the privilege of being such a huge company, and they have the privilege of being able to like spend a lot of money to do really strange and kind of out there things. Like I think back to even back when Microsoft was making tablet computers in the early 2000s, late 90s, and people were like, "What the hell? Like, why would I ever need this?" And like 10 years later, like Apple did the same thing at the right time. And I think, yeah, they have the money to do that, dude. When the 360 got recalled for all the Red Rings of Death, that was $1 billion recall that they were just like, yeah, we'll just recall it for $1 billion, and that way, and they were fine. Like it's just totally okay. Like that is insane. To have that level of flexibility in what you do and the kind of risks that you're allowed to take. I think that helps them a lot. I think it helps them a lot when they made the Xbox, and the original Xbox had a hard drive in it, and I remember that being a big deal. And I think Xbox Live with the Xbox Live Arcade and achievements and all that stuff is the same. And I think you're seeing the same thing now with Xbox on different platforms and the kind of interconnected connectivity between these titles on whatever platform you're on. I think you're probably right in a lot of ways. I think even something that I have noticed, even with my time with both machines, the Series X and the PS5, is dude, quick resume is crazy. Quick resume is sincerely impressive. Like obviously, like PS5 load times are really, really cool, and obviously they're really fast and they're still blazing. Like I still can't believe that I'm able to jump into Miles Morales as quickly as I am, and that I'm able to fast travel across the city as quickly as I am. But there's something about like jumping from like the middle of Sekiro to like the middle of Halo in like less than like 9 seconds without having to deal with like splash screens and menus. That's like, I think that's something that probably will be in some way, shape, or form implemented into the PlayStation 5 in the future, because I don't see how they can't copy this. Because it is so freaking cool. I posted like an Instagram story on it, and I was able to fit me transferring between 2 games within the allotted time of an Instagram story, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've been kind of jealously looking at that as well. Hopefully they'll be able to implement that. There shouldn't be any hardware issue why they couldn't.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is kind of like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And I would like that too. It is a little annoying to not have more than one game up at a time.
Yeah.
All right. 3 more. Moore's Law is Dead wrote into us and said, Cocoa and Coconut. Which one do you think's which? I don't know. Well, he says, well, the results are in. The PS5 outperforms the Xbox Series X in almost all third-party games, and sometimes by a decent margin. Just check Digital Foundry and NX Gamer on YouTube. Furthermore, exclusives like Spider-Man and Godfall demonstrate the best use of console ray tracing, and Demon's Souls, by most counts, is the best-looking next-gen game as of now. Yet we still see so many tech sites saying, quote-unquote, the Xbox Series X is the stronger console, unquote, in their assessments, despite all evidence showing the contrary. Do you expect reviewers to actually update their opinions with data, or can they not be bothered? It's somewhat concerning to me how frequently this is being parroted after launch. It suggests any company can just market their device as the strongest, and reviewers will just swallow that marketing as a fact without ever checking if it's true. Should Sony start marketing their PS5 as stronger? They might as well in a world where facts seem to not matter. Thank you for writing in. Moore's Law is Dead. So first of all, I've not been paying too much attention to the Digital Foundry stuff, mostly because I'm not interested in that. It seems like there's much more parity between the consoles this time than last time, which is great for both of them, because PS4, I think, was way outperforming Xbox One at the time at launch on certain games that weren't even running at 1080p. So yeah, I don't see, we talked about this, I think, over the summer, Chris. I'm a Luddite. I don't understand this shit at all. But I remember people writing in saying, like, it's not about the numbers, like the teraflops and whatever. It's about like the way the console uses those things. And we were talking just before about the SSD and about how one uses it better than the other and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in the tech space? Because you're much more involved in that. Are you seeing a consistent outperformance from PS5 versus Xbox? And are you seeing that there's kind of a lagging acceptance that the on-the-box statistics don't necessarily match true performance?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've watched a little bit of Digital Foundry. I really like that stuff, even if I don't really understand what the hell they're saying. It's like something about like soft-spoken British people going over tech jargon just sounds really nice.
Sure.
But yeah, I've seen some of this, and I've seen like, yeah, the PS5 has some advantages in the way that it uses its SSD. I've seen some examples in like Dirt 5, for example, where it just looks a lot crisper. But I've also seen instances of like, oh yeah, you know, on Call of Duty Cold War apparently runs better on Xbox Series X than it does on PlayStation 5. Again, like that's based on like one specific thing that I saw, but it's a Digital Foundry thing, so I think it's particularly reputable. I think the issue is when the Xbox Series X markets itself as the strongest console, it's not a lie, because on paper and based on like the components that exist, it is the stronger machine, like objectively. But what matters is how that machine, like you said, like interprets data or runs data or like streams data through the SSD, through the GPU, through all these different things that results in inconsistent performances on some games or some others. I think the biggest issue right now is that we don't really have true next-gen games to compare. All we really have are, you know, things like Assassin's Creed, which are already like famously buggy and don't run particularly well, or you have like Call of Duty that is on, you know, multiple generations. Xbox Series X doesn't have a Demon's Souls. You know, it doesn't have a Ratchet and Clank. It doesn't have, you know, it doesn't have anything that is only on this generation. So it's hard to really compare the power of these two machines really accurately, because what we're working with is next-gen games that are also previous gen, that also have a history of running poorly, or just old games that either haven't been optimized or haven't been really touched up at all in preparation for these launches. And even the ones that do they're, you know, it's still just like like some maintenance on an older game. So I don't know. I don't know if you could really say that Xbox is lying. I just think that in a lot of cases, PlayStation just happens to use the SSD better. You know,
I think you make a great point that we don't have a Demon's Souls yet, or a Godfall, or anything like that to make the proper comparisons. And once we do, then I guess we can do that. It's a great point.
Yeah.
David Muckrauer wrote into us and said, CCD, D's not here. I'm wondering why big open world games don't offer a curated linear experience. I have no interest in giant open world games like The Witcher or Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Cyberpunk. I don't want to craft or wander aimlessly. That said, there is supposed to be a great story, some fun combat, etc. that I would love to enjoy in a tight 20 to 25 hours. I'd be ecstatic to be getting a story, some clear objectives, and not much freedom of choice. Not easy, just not free range. Is there a good reason this has never been offered as an option? I actually love this idea. And this is interesting because we are talking more and more these days about accessibility. Even people with severe, what you would consider severe disabilities that would preclude them from playing video games traditionally, they can still somehow get involved in these games. Microsoft, again, at the forefront of that. Also, some of Sony's studios at the forefront of that as well. But yeah, there's something else here where it's like, I want to just experience the story. Why isn't there like a through line Assassin's Creed path through as opposed to forcing people to play it? I kind of like where his head's at. I think it would take a lot of work. I know that there are games that have like easy mode or basically like story mode, but you still have to go like Uncharted does that, but you still have to go through like all of the motions. What he's basically saying is like, just cut all of the fluff out of an open world game and give me the linear narrative. And I feel like there's actually an idea there that's kind of nice. Maybe it has been done, but I don't know.
Maybe I feel like this is just because isn't the whole point of an open world game that you can kind of choose to do things at your own pace? Like if you wanted to go through just the main quest of Skyrim, you could do that in like 5 hours, and you wouldn't even really have to grind really. Like you would just go from like one story mission to the next story mission, and you'd have like a main quest line, and you would just go through it, and it would be really quick and easy. Like I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's what I was going to say, where that might have been his concern, is that these games kind of expect that you do the side content, and so you can't really blaze through. Yeah.
Because you won't be strong enough or whatever.
Yeah, there are definitely some games. I think that one of the most recent Assassin's Creeds had like a big problem with this, where like you kind of had to grind out a bunch of levels in order to proceed.
Odyssey did that.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know, maybe I just don't play that many open world games, or maybe I don't try to blaze through them as fast. I haven't noticed recently in any of the open world games that I've played a necessity to go through and do the side content. The most recent one I can remember was Red Dead Redemption 2, where you didn't, that was a long ass game already, but you didn't have to do like a lot of the secondary stuff that I ended up doing just because I wanted to, like you didn't, I don't know, maybe
it worked there because it was so much less of a role-playing game.
I guess that is true. Yeah. I don't know. Like maybe I just haven't played a proper role-playing game in a while, but I remember it used to be that you could just blaze through the main quest line if you wanted, and you didn't need to grind or make yourself particularly powerful to do it. But that I'll admit that I'm not necessarily super knowledgeable on that front.
Well, I'll also say that even if you couldn't do that, you could just drop the difficulty and then do that.
Yeah. No, I think there's probably like an idea there. Yeah, like maybe although I think it would be less of a new game mode, and I feel like it would just be more like, hey, just highlight the main quests, that kind of thing, and just so they're easy to hear. Because there are definitely some games where like you can't tell what the main quest is because every quest looks the same, and I've definitely experienced that. But yeah, I don't know.
Is also cool. I also kind of dig that. Fallout does that a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but you can still blaze through. But Fallout's pretty short, actually. Like if you want to just go through like the prime story,
certainly. It's been a while. I'm waiting for them to re-release it on PS5. That'll never happen. So I'm talking about Fallout 3, by the way.
You think you're gonna get Skyrim PS5, Xbox Series X before you get Fallout 3?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what they're doing with Fallout. It's very weird. All right, the final question comes from Bizarro, who wrote in and said, "Fellas, what will be this generation's finesse? PS3 and 360 saw online passes. PS4 and Xbox One were plagued by loot boxes. But as lawmakers' interest shifts towards control of loot boxes, I expect to see our beloved industry find another way to make things interesting. What are your thoughts? Be well and happy Turkey Day." Thank you, Bizarro. I actually really like this question. I think the answer is obvious. Subscriptions will be the new finesse. This I think it's obvious it's going to be that, you know?
Yeah, totally. You already saw it with Fortnite earlier.
Right, exactly. And we're seeing that with Ubisoft and EA on a publisher level. It's going to be this overwhelming amount of subscriptions.
Yeah. That did technically kind of start a little bit before this generation, but I do think we're going to see a lot of it.
Yeah, it'll kind of come to fruition. Because you're right. I mean, subscriptions go all the way back to the origins of MMOs and stuff. Even I just mean
like on console, yeah.
Right. I think this is going to be the point in which there's an inflection point here where people's tolerance for this stuff is going to start falling. I think this is going to be true. I said this to someone recently where I'm like, people need to start thinking about consolidation. The Hulu model, the old Hulu model. Hulu's so funny because it was NBC and Fox originally getting together so they didn't compete with each other. Now NBC is doing their own thing and Fox has their own. It's like, it's too much. And this expectation that people are going to follow you everywhere is a mistake. So
yeah. No, I was the second Disney Plus came out. I was like, no. Like,
yeah, that was too much for me. I got it and then canceled it.
Yeah, like I'll have my Netflix and my Hulu and that's about it. Like, fuck right off. You know.
Yeah, and Amazon Prime just because I buy so much stuff on Amazon that I might as well have.
Yeah, Prime. but that's not even like a streaming thing primarily. That just has like a streaming thing kind of tacked onto it. That like, I guess I'll watch like Men in the High Castle or whatever the hell, or The Boys, since I get a lot of packages. But you know, as far as like a dedicated streaming platform, like that's probably like all, and it's probably the only ones that I need. And I think for video games, it's like, all right, I got PS Plus, I got Game Pass. I'm done. Like that's it. Like you're not gonna sell me anything more. You know, especially when like stuff like EA Play is like on Game Pass now, where it's like, okay, well, yeah, well, fuck everything else then.
That's more the consolidation I'm talking about. They need to start being more clever with that stuff. And
yeah, I think PS Now should be integrated into PS Plus. I think that should happen.
Yes.
I think you got to simplify people's. Not necessarily simplify people's choices, because I think that sounds like kind of like weirdly nefarious, but I think it's also like accurate. I think people need to just kind of have a solid idea of what it is that they're getting, and they don't need this excessive amount of granular customization when it comes to like streaming services.
Yeah, remember the dream used to be a la carte, and then it's like almost be careful what you ask for in some way, but it's still working out pretty well for us, and we'll just have to. It'll collapse down in on itself at some point. We'll just have to see when that happens. But that's all we have for this week.
Yeah,
of Sacred Symbols. It's kind of slow right now. People are playing. We're waiting for some news and information. So yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, it's a slower week, but it's a holiday, so
right,
exactly. You anticipate this kind of thing.
So Chris, appreciate your time. This won't go up until after Thanksgiving, but I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. And
yeah, you too, man.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone out there. Thank you for your love, kindness, and support, whether on Patreon at patreon.com/ColinsLastStand. We'd love your support there, or on free feeds. We'll talk to you very soon indeed. Until next time, goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Collins Last Stand, LLC, and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia, and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Collins Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/CollinsLastStand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Nick DeMarco, Constantine Valencia, Andrew Morgan, Gregory Slavinsky, Stephen Nieder, Ross Marenka, Zach Parsley, Miguel A. Brewer, Morgan Ashley, Ben, Azan, Michael Vecchio, Brianne, Joey Finelli, Jerome Ferreira, SL the FMA, Ryan T. Mandel, Jorge Palomino, Enrique Perez, Don Lee, Daniel Diamore, Brad Cooley, Jeremy Key, Patrick Leslie, Homeworld Hub, William Holbert, 3dprintshop.com, Chris Buston, Betty Ann Moriarty, Colin Jewell, Nelson LeBlanc, Daniel Johnson, Zach Bonham, an Unofficial Controller Podcast, Jay Getter, Vexius, Jeff Mercado, Galja, Of Fortuna, Boots, Megadet, Saul Balcazar, Raul Melendez, Bloody Fang, Eric Harden, Matt Martin, Rodney Coleman, Chris Moore, TB Lightning, Andy Kinnunen, Taylor Barkley, Chris Galvin, Ryan Murdoch, Mason Cadillac, Ollie Fritz, Chris Buston, Zach Allum, George Anthony Nunez, Kyle Hagel, Colin Love, Daryl E. Naiman, Ryan Arkittredge, Toby Ryland, Michael S., Damon Weathers, Carl Tolman, Richter 86, Barrett Boswell, Christopher DeVio, Kevin Kamaki, Blake Israel, Sean Mason, Josh Gravelick, Brian Chan, Organic Produce, Ali C83, Isaac Wastman, Mubarak, Carlos Algrit, McDog 18, Richard Hebert III, Miranda Grubba, Ray Leja, David Castanez, Donnie Nolan, Josh Yeager, Matthew Cooper, Toothless Gibbon, Martin Beck, Gavin, Joey Andrzejczyk, Nathan R., Joe McPartlin, Christopher Moore, Lawrence F. Prokop, Colin Davenport, Eric Finkenbeiner, Lou and Ray Loper, Dylan Burns, John Schultz, David Chestnut, Yusuf, Anton K., Alan Tremblay, Tyler Bello, Tony Zuniga, Sean Battershaw, Robbie Hensley, Alex Cabrera, Lennon Brixey, Corey Wyatt, James Kinslow III, Hugo's Desk, Peter Reynolds, William O. Carroll, JSC 0828, Jesper Jansen, Phil Crone, Throw7, Adam Nix, Josh McKinney, Michael Gates, Alex Gates, Sean Chandler, Petro Rose, Gio Corsi, Greg Lotta, Gerald Pennington, Justin Wagaman, Paul Joyce, Chad Lewis, Todd Paxton, Joshua Smallwood, Shane Rayum, Spencer Brand, John Cordero, Greg Juliffs, Mark Boggio, Keith A. Lewis, Marius Carson Peterson, Tyler Harris, Matthew Purdue, Toby Shootman, Patrick Harper, Mad Mock Media, Jonathan Rice, and Casual Misfits Gaming.